Señores, la conferencia principal va a ser hecha en inglés y aquellos que quieran usar el servicio de traducción simultánea para su versión en castellano pueden obtener un equipo ahí afuera, ¿no?, para poder seguir en idioma castellano. Señoras y señores, son las 14:30 en Lima, Perú. Tengan todos ustedes muy buenas tardes. El Consejo Mundial de la Energía, y esta vez desde el Perú, da a conocer al mundo uno de sus importantes estudios que son parte de la importante actividad que realiza el Consejo Mundial en todo el mundo. Es el estudio de escenarios energéticos para Latinoamérica y el Caribe al año 2060. Van a intervenir en esta reunión la ingeniera Claudia Cronenbold, que es la vicepresidenta para Latinoamérica y el Caribe del Consejo Mundial de la Energía. El presentador del resumen del estudio será el ingeniero Gerald Davis, que es el que dirige los estudios de escenarios que viene realizando el Consejo Mundial de la Energía. Porque este estudio, que se ha hecho también para todo el mundo, luego se viene haciendo por cada una de las 6 regiones en que está dividido el mundo. En este caso, Latinoamérica y el Caribe. Finalmente, el economista señor Mauricio Garrón, que es director de análisis y estrategia de energía de la CAF, que es el Banco de Desarrollo de América Latina, intervendrá también. Concluyendo la reunión, el señor viceministro de Energía nos visitará para conversar brevísimamente con todos nosotros. Sin nada más por ahora, quiero invitar a la ingeniera Claudia Cronenbold, que es la vicepresidenta para América Latina y el Caribe del Consejo Mundial de la Energía. Recibámosla con un cariñoso aplauso.
Muy buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias, Guillermo, por recibirnos aquí en el Perú. Para mí es un inmenso placer y un gran orgullo estar aquí para presentarles este estudio de escenarios energéticos para América Latina y el Caribe. Como explicó Guillermo, es un estudio global y este es el primer informe de una profundización en una región específica. Entonces, hemos contado con la colaboración. El Consejo Mundial de Energía tiene una estructura que conforma comités en cada país que es miembro. En nuestra región nosotros tenemos 11 países miembros y un país más que es miembro directo. Entonces hemos tenido la colaboración de toda una red de expertos de todos estos 12 países que han trabajado durante 3 años. Se iniciaron en el 2015 las primeras reuniones y ya en 2016 tuvimos un primer lanzamiento de los resultados de este estudio en Cartagena. Entonces yo quería agradecer en especial a los organizadores del evento, al Comité Peruano del Consejo Mundial de Energía, al señor Guillermo Castillo y al señor Néstor Vargas por todo su empeño para que este evento se realice. Así también el apoyo que nos ha brindado el Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, que nos ha prestado estas hermosas instalaciones. También un agradecimiento especial a la CAF, que es uno de nuestros principales socios en este tipo de proyectos y de estudios. Ha sido nuestro principal patrocinador en este estudio, junto con Electrobras y la Unidad de Planeamiento Minero y Energético de Colombia. Sin extenderme mucho más, agradecerles por su participación, por estar aquí con nosotros, acompañarnos a este lanzamiento, que al mismo tiempo que lo estamos presenciando en el Perú, estamos realizando una webinar en toda la región. Entonces toda la región está teniendo la oportunidad de conectarse gracias al soporte de la CAF una vez más, para que podamos tener todos la misma divulgación de este importante estudio. Espero que lo disfruten y que sea enriquecedor para todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
El Comité Peruano del Consejo Mundial de la Energía, con mucho gusto recibió el encargo del Consejo Mundial de la Energía de que la reunión de presentación de este estudio que está ocurriendo el día de hoy para el mundo y para Latinoamérica y el Caribe en particular, se hiciera en el Perú. Esto es una distinción para nuestro país, que el Consejo Mundial de la Energía esté lanzando al mundo, como lo hace en sus diversos estudios, esta vez desde el Perú, ¿no? Y esto es el motivo fundamental de esta reunión. Quiero presentarles al señor Gerald Davis, que es el director de los estudios de escenarios energéticos mundiales del Consejo Mundial de la Energía. El Consejo Mundial de la Energía realiza estudios como este, que se programan en sus grandes reuniones anuales para determinar los programas, etc. En este caso, el estudio de escenarios para Latinoamérica y el Caribe se ha venido realizando a lo largo de 3 años aproximadamente, y el señor Davis, que es el director de estos estudios, lo va a presentar para ustedes y para todos los que nos están siguiendo por el sistema de streaming. Gerald, let me tell you that you have plenty of time for your presentation. If you need slightly more than 1 hour with questions and answers, that will be perfectly all right. Mr. Gerald Davis.
Is this? Yeah. Well, it's my deep pleasure to be here, and let me thank the organizers for hosting in such a wonderful venue. I've been privileged to work with many people from across the Latin American and Caribbean region in trying to make sense of the one thing that is always true, and that is that the future is really not forecastable in its entirety. It's continually changing, and sometimes it really matters whether you appreciate the future or not. And I think particularly of the energy industry. We are called upon to make decisions which have consequences decades ahead. And yet our current view of the future is so often shaped by what's happening at the moment. And it's really precisely in such a situation that scenarios can assist you. They are essentially narratives, rigorously quantified, well thought through, developed with a large collective of people to try to better understand what is potentially forecastable and what is critically uncertain. And we will explore those elements as we move into the scenarios themselves. The starting point is something which is perhaps quite surprising. And that is, we've been living in a period of time which is really quite extraordinary. A period of around 45 years, if we look back 45 years, where the world population has doubled. If you look at the table in front of you on the left-hand side, we talk a little bit about the factors that have shaped the world in the last 45 years. This doubling of population has very little historical equivalent. Of course, populations have grown as we've moved into the industrial era, but this period has been quite exceptional. And a new set of technologies that have emerged, which have been quite difficult to fully appreciate with the advent of new tools, software, going back, let's say, to the 1970s. Just think of it, internet really only emerged as a tool for everyone in the 90s. And then we have seen radical change in the way we think about these new technologies, as today we think of pervasive digitalization, the effects of combining the impacts across many different technologies to create much more quickly than we would have envisaged new technologies. And this emerging productivity paradox, essentially, as we improve our productivity, we displace people, perhaps eventually by robots. But this displacement of people is socially divisive and very challenging, and one of the issues that societies in general are beginning to address. I think also when we talk of environmental issues, over the last 45 years, we spewed into the air around 1,900 gigatons of CO2. We didn't really compute it. We didn't need to compute it. We didn't understand why we would in the future have to be concerned about this. And lastly, and this has shaped all around the world, has been the rapid economic rise of developing countries, and an increasing widening of the international governance structures to include, for example, the G20 and representation from across the world. But I think the more one reflects on these things, the last 45 years may have been critical, it becomes clear and clear relatively quickly that the next 45 years, and we're looking out to 2060, will be very different. Just the basic fundamentals can shock. Global population, which we took for granted in its doubling, will grow only another 40%. This is the UN mid-rate estimates. That is at a rate of around 0.7% per annum, which is radically lower than the 1.7%. And that has important implications for the growth of GDP. I mentioned the way technology is shifting in pervasive digitalization, and there are a range of other new technologies which are likely to have very important impacts on the structure and nature of economies, question the fundamentals of what is work, what is a job, open up all sorts of new options which have yet to be fully appreciated. We are talking, for example, at COP21 on the desire and need to reach a global warming target of around 2 degrees centigrade. To do that, we have essentially to reconstitute our energy structures to produce nearly 50% less than we have over the last 45 years. And that is the legacy that is providing a particular challenge. And this is going to be a period when we understand, and it's a consequence of population growth slowing, but not just that. Many countries will age, some partly for policy reasons. China already is beginning to approach that stage, whereas others will continue to grow, like India, as we move certainly into the 2030s. So this is the background, the context in which we are thinking about the future. But it's not just these factors which are relatively forecastable, the predetermined elements. It's also that there are some absolutely critical uncertainties that will shape the energy industry. These new technologies, what will be the pace of their innovation? What sort of productivity levels are possible? That's an important issue, because in a world that is essentially growing much more slowly in terms of population and the size of the labor force, it needs, in fact, if we're to grow, to do something on the productivity side. Now, as I mentioned, we have a range of new technologies. You can see them up here. We're talking of rapid diffusion of technology. We talked about digitalization, perhaps new business models emerging. Many of the aspects of the energy industry will be severely influenced by this. In fact, part of the desire of energy system is to ensure energy can be delivered to consumers, industrial customers and others at a point in time, at an acceptable cost. Control of energy use much more carefully will have important implications on the overall energy efficiency and demand for energy. And when it comes to productivity, in the last 45 years, productivity grew at a level equal, essentially, to the rate of population growth. And that's what lies behind a near 3.5% per annum growth worldwide in technology, in GDP. But there's a fierce debate underway at the moment about how much productivity is possible with the new technologies. Some, and Robert Gordon, for example, in his seminal book on the rise and fall of the US economy, is somebody who believes that this level of productivity per annum could be really as low as 1% and possibly in the US substantially lower. Whereas the techno-optimists think of much more is possible, and they point to the quick diffusion of ideas, the possibility that we would have high levels of productivity going forward. This is a critical uncertainty that lies behind the range of GDP figures that we look at. But it's not just pace of innovation and productivity. Equally important is the development of international governance and geopolitical change. Effectively, as we move the center of gravity of the global economy more towards Asia, and as we see the pressure for geopolitical change, the question emerges is, can this change take place smoothly? Will the international system hold together, or is it likely to be fractured and become problematic? It ought to be clear these are exactly the issues that we have to think about when we address an issue like climate change. And then there's the question of what priority will be given to issues like sustainability and the climate. There's no universal position on this. There has been a strong push towards sustainability. But even when there's an agreement, as we saw in COP21, it transpires maybe a year or two later with a new set of politicians in power that these things can change. And then of particular interest to energy people, because the tools we select to act have important consequences for the energy industry, the way it's structured, the way it operates, and both the challenges that it has. Perhaps the two that are most important are the contrast between states, particularly state directives, and those that have strong affinity to market solutions. As you can see, there is a coherence in state directions. It's around taxes and subsidies. It's about an emphasis on public research and development. It's around stylized regulation, the importance of education. The real aim is around national and sector planning. It's about public investment, and it has a particular role for state companies. You can contrast that with a market-oriented approach, which emphasizes efficiency and competition, a private research and development, innovation as a focus, training, corporate vision and planning being particularly important, perhaps global in scope, and it's about private investment, private corporations. The question is which tools will be dominant, and these are not issues that can be answered just theoretically. They depend on culture, they depend on experience. Some types of problems are easier to solve with one set of tools than another. I think the question as a pragmatist is the one that Deng Xiaoping reminded us of in a particular way as the Chinese economy was beginning to move underway in the 1980s. it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. And that's probably as good a philosophy as any, being supremely pragmatic and yet honoring where we come from without turning to ideology as the basis for action. So with that in mind, let me say a little bit about the 3 scenarios that were developed and launched in Istanbul in October last year. We developed 3 scenarios. You'll see straight away the names are musical in nature. The aim of naming scenarios is to give people a sense of the rhythm, the dynamics, the nature of the environment. It's not just a rational activity of saying that this is the size of the system. Modern jazz represents what we would call a digitally disruptive, highly innovative and market-driven world. It's a very modern future. When you think of jazz, you think of improvisation, many different instruments working together, creating something that's special, unique, the ability to work in harmony together. And yet, nevertheless, there's a distinct element of competition. Unfinished symphony is a world in which more intelligent and sustainable economic growth becomes the focus of developments. It's driving, if we look at the energy issues, very much to a low carbon energy future. But the full job of meeting COP21 is not going to be easy. This is a symphony, it's orchestrated, there are many different players. Think of COP21 with nigh on a couple of 200 countries, each saying what they would contribute, working together. Ideally, in a symphony, it is concluded, but even COP21 itself is a challenge in terms of meeting these targets, the 2-degree centigrade. And then a future which the teams involved agonized over. Hard rock, it's dissonant, it's abrasive, it's lacking in harmony, it's aggressive music. This is about a more fragmented approach driven by the desire for energy security. It's much more inward looking. It's a world that's emerging, some people believe it's here, perhaps as a competitor to the other 2. This is the point of scenarios. Each world can be developed as a plausible, challenging entity in its own right, but we don't know which one will emerge. And if we're true to the situation, we have the possibility to create the future we want. If we could organize ourselves to do that. Sometimes, of course, it's not as easy as that. So I think with this as a background, let me turn to the region. The way we look at the world is strongly shaped by what is currently going on. And I'm sure, at least if I look at myself, you come back in 2 or 3 years, you'll be seeing different things as important. So let's have a look at the issues that matter. The first issue that comes up, I don't have every country in the region here, and this is taken from the IMF and the World Energy Outlook database. But it's worth having a look. First obvious issue is that there are a number of countries that have had particular difficulties in the last 2 years, Venezuela, Brazil as examples. And this really goes back to the dependence on commodities and the commodity cycle. The very factors that gave rise to the fall were implicit in the rise of the GDP in the decade or so before 2014. But of course, the good news is if you look increasingly across the region, there are economies that have decoupled or have even benefited from the reduction in commodity prices. And you can look at successful countries in Central America, the Caribbean, and as we move into South America, we can include countries like Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, here, Colombia, Uruguay, and Chile, all on balance growing at around 4% or so per annum, if not higher. Therefore, as you would expect, if you move around the region, you'll see very different perspectives on the issues of the day and the potential for the future. If we turn to energy, what we see is a region that in relative terms, looking at other developing countries, has done remarkably well. Pretty close to energy access being close to 100%. There are just under 20 million people who still lack access to electricity. But if we look at this remarkable set of experiences from 2000 to 2014, you can see some remarkable success. Now, if you want to delve into this in more detail, when you look at the current analysis coming out of the World Energy Council's Energy Monitor of issues, there are some challenges that remain, in particular to ensure energy is adequately affordable. Having access is not all it's cut out to be if in fact energy is too expensive. Part of the reason for the success in some countries has been a fairly high level of subsidies. This itself brings challenges. For the obvious reason that if you subsidize heavily and your fundamental economic strength suffers, you're left with enormous commitments. And the example of some of those countries at the top here, Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, El Salvador, 3 countries with over 2% or more of GDP being spent on subsidies, and a very significant proportion of tax revenue. You're better off in many respects, but it requires careful management to achieve equity through other means than just through subsidies. And we look around the world, I won't go into that in detail, we see many other countries that are trying to do what we've seen many in the region do, and that is reduce subsidy levels, particularly in the context of lower crude oil and natural gas prices. And if we look at the issues that matter, I've pulled this out of the issues monitor from this year. We can see where energy leaders in the region see some of the current issues. Looking at here are some obvious ones around economic growth and commodity pricing being of both here high impact and relatively uncertain. Surprisingly, we have emerging interest around innovative transport, and in particular, which is unique to the region, and that's really in the context of the recent El Nino, is around the effects of extreme weather. And on top of course, other climatic events which really have raised concerns. I've also included here the positioning of regional integration, because that's an issue I want to come back and explore in the context of the scenarios later. And I mentioned the concern here in the region about extreme weather. If you look at this map here, it has both countries and energy sectors worldwide. And here you have Latin America and the Caribbean. What you see is the issue is both high in the need for action and also some issues around the uncertainty as well. Why has it been important? It's because of the enormous emphasis on hydropower in the region. And for hydropower to work, you need some degree of understanding of the climatic conditions, and in particular precipitation. What we've seen, for example, if we look across the region from intense, from intense rains in this region to scarce precipitation on the in the Amazon area, severe droughts where they were not expected, and down here, extraordinary amounts of rain. Now, obviously, when you're designing a connected set of hydropower plants with other energy-based, perhaps fossil fuel-based plants, you need to be able to know you can manage through the year. And this is perhaps the point about climate change. We know the regularities from the past. We know that something's going to be different in the future, but as we travel from where we are to the future, what are the regularities on which we can pin our operating activities to? If we look at the largest country in the region, what we see is, again, understandably in Brazil, a focus here around economic growth and commodity pricing, important drivers of the economy, the current set of concerns on corruption in the industry, and the emerging set of issues around electricity storage, partly in the context of the climatic issues I mentioned. And at the moment, less of an emphasis on the positioning of regional integration. Just to make the point about regional integration, what we see here are two maps, one of them on electricity interconnection and the other on gas pipelines. There are, in fact, and I'm sure we'll hear from our colleague later, there are many projects around that focus on the increasing interconnection of electric networks and the opportunities that may well be there for extended gas pipelines. I won't go into this in detail. I will pick up the issue as we talk about the Latin America, Caribbean scenarios. So with that as a sort of basis for thinking about some of the issues that seem to be shaping minds at the moment, let's have a look at the Latin American and Caribbean scenarios and the key descriptors. Firstly, we have a number of predetermined elements. I mentioned slower population growth, but in a surprising way, it's even more intense in parts of the region than it is for the world as a whole. We're looking at Brazil's population growth rate dropping from 1.7% per annum historically, last 45 years, to around 0.3% per annum in what would be a rapidly aging society. And elsewhere in the region, we're looking at faster population growth, but still much lower than anything we've seen in the past. The full range of technologies that I mentioned in talking about the world scenarios are available here. They're accessible in many different ways. So those technologies have yet to be fully applied or even in significant ways to be applied. But we can well expect, particularly in an innovative world, why wouldn't we be innovative in this region? Thirdly, the vulnerability to climate change is unlikely to go away. And the question, of course, when we look at the scenarios, how vulnerable? And again, the shifts in economic power, the rise of China, which has been in many ways already influential in the development of agricultural products as markets for minerals and so on. I mentioned modern jazz, unfinished symphony, and hard rock. These scenarios tell us something about how we navigate the grand transition. In this region, selected by the teams, our colleagues from across the region, they chose samba as something more distinct for the region than modern jazz. The music, the flamboyance, the competition of the teams, the movement, the creativity. Samba is highly productive, highly creative, highly challenging. We'll talk about it in a moment. Tango, much more carefully movements, perhaps led by government, but with industry and others working in unison, more structured. And rock, dissonant, challenging, local, inward-looking. Let's talk a little bit about some of the elements. This is about a scenario where the region is shaped by successful reforms. It's about strong innovation. It's highly coupled to the outside world. Not only that, that coupling means that there are opportunities worldwide for developments in the region. It's not about importing, it's about finding that right balance. It's about in some ways, a preparedness to allow the openness of a market to succeed. It's challenging because not everybody can succeed in this sort of environment, and the social issues will be challenging. It's about much more rapid economic diversification of the region's economies beyond commodities. It's about, on the energy front, energy affordability for all. It's about valuing developments which meet the needs of all, not just those in the middle class and above. The world of tango, a region that is shaped by governments, pragmatic, intelligent governments, with a purpose of achieving some form of sustainable growth and a resilient energy system. This is a world which can look forward, can sustain decisions for quite a long period and take a social perspective. It values regional integration and with it, more substantial regional governance. It's prepared to enforce tough rules, regulations. It's about high investment. And it's not just around mitigation projects. It's particularly around adjusting to handle, for example, some of the challenges we saw around hydropower and the shifting in climate. And lastly, in rock, it's more inward-looking. It's about the challenges of dealing with low productivity. So with low productivity and low economic growth, we don't have an economy that can generate the sort of capacity to invest that we see in samba and tango. So with that in mind, let us move this forward and examine both the key findings globally and contrast them with the key findings for the region itself. Perhaps the biggest headline that was received after the Istanbul Congress was the focus on the finding that the world's primary energy demand growth will slow. Per capita energy demand will peak before 2030. And this is really to do with a set of factors which are different in each scenario. In modern jazz, what we're looking at are very high levels of innovation and productivity, and it's difficult to believe that these would not be translated into the energy sector. But they also might be driven by much tougher regulation in Unfinished Symphony, which is really trying to drive towards this low carbon future. Or it might also be equally driven by a hard rock scenario where we're looking at substantially more challenging environment. If that's the situation for the world, when we look at the LAC region, what we see is a real contrast with recent experience. Primary energy demand in LAC grew at around 3.2% per annum in the 14 years from the year 2000. But when we look forward, it's expected to grow at a substantially lower rate, somewhere in the order of 1.6 to 1.9% per annum from to 2030, and even slower from 2030 to 2060. All of this is due in part to the lower, particularly in samba and tango scenarios, the lower level of energy intensity. And these low levels of energy intensity are not repeated in hard rock, which is performing rather similar to historical experience. In the region, we're looking at the demand for electricity to grow quite substantially. In the global scenarios, we were looking at around a doubling of electricity across each of the scenarios. Part of this is to do with the increasing urbanization that's underway. Technology-enabled urban lifestyles demand electricity. This is about the growth of the middle class, rising incomes, and more electricity-enabled appliances and machines. So this is very difficult to push back. This is almost something which is like a tide that drives across all regions. The demand for electricity in LAC rises, as we can see here, at 2.3 to 2.7 times to 2060. This is in line, as I said, with global developments. Through to 2030, when we look at how that electricity will be met, we're looking at hydro dominating new power generation growth, with 40 to 65% of the generation increment Beyond 2030, the new generation increment is dominated by natural gas, wind, solar, and others. So we're looking at a changing structure of the industry. Wind and solar shares in LAC will increase, but stay below global averages. They're coming from a substantially lower base. What we're looking at, as I mentioned, is the important increase in solar and wind. Solar in particular is potentially complementary to hydropower development. When we look into the sector, the sort of funding required in the period to 2060 is between 2 to 2.5 trillion US dollars based on a 2010 market exchange rate. If we look to fossil fuels, firstly, worldwide, we're looking at an important shift underway here. Demand peaks for coal and oil have the potential to not only have stranded assets at the corporate level, but raise the challenge for some countries of stranded resources. Coal and potentially oil that one would have expected to be produced that will now not be produced. The momentum of new technologies and renewable energy generation results in the fossil fuel share of primary energy falling to 70% by 2060. In hard rock, we're looking at this sort of level, and somewhat lower in modern jazz. Coal peaks around the 2020 area in modern jazz, and oil at around 2030. You can see that here. So oil will have some particularly challenging times. In a way, the coal issue is important in Colombia and Chile, but less of an issue perhaps elsewhere. Important, and this is difficult to shift given the changing structure of demand, is an increasing role for natural gas. And natural gas demand continues to rise at varying rates across the period to 2060. If we go into the Latin America and Caribbean region, what we're looking at here is oil demand, as we can see here, rising up to the 2030 area, and then the beginning of peaking and stabilization in rock. And the natural gas figures as indicated. In transport, we're looking at a rapid development, particularly in biofuels. This is an important set of developments. It's interesting that this is almost exceptional to the region. When we look at the global developments, what we're looking at more significantly is a rapid rise in electric vehicles. Perhaps of the 3 billion vehicles by 2060, see in tango and the equivalent of tango, unfinished symphony and modern jazz, would see around a third of them, some 1 billion electric vehicles. The electricity share of transport energy in LAC is expected to grow, but nevertheless remain substantially below, as I've said, the global picture. If we turn now to global warming, At the global level, you can see here, if we look at what needs to be achieved in order to achieve the 2-degree centigrade target, we're looking at Unfinished Symphony moving well down that line, the tango equivalent at the global level, and modern jazz following, perhaps with a delay here of around 15 years. And hard rock, very much inwardly focused on balance, with a focus on the development, continued development of and replacement of fossil fuel plants. And if we look at the region is perhaps the best performing anyway worldwide on this issue. And the challenge here is to handle in tango the turn down. So the projects put in place to achieve that, we see in rock increasing and a turn down around 2050 in samba. So let me turn really to regional integration across the scenario. When we look at samba, what we're really concerned about here are focusing on projects which are particularly profitable, can lower overall costs to the energy system. And this could happen in a wide variety of forms. When we look at tango, we're looking here at multilateral arrangements, probably in the context of a wider set of regional agreements. It's about collective security, resilience of energy and environmental systems. And ideally, of course, these are also quite profitable as well. And behind this would be a commitment not only to address climate change, to be able to handle the challenges that climate has for the region, and with a much more restricted set of opportunities in hard rock. It's perhaps worth having a perspective on regional energy integration, and I'm going to cover some of the issues that we raised in Cartagena, and also that have been reinforced by this work. I think the first thing, given the economic difficulty in some areas, is to get a handle going forward on what's required for successful economic development. And energy regional integration can make an important contribution to economic success. The right projects at the right costs, providing benefits. Secondly, successful economic development itself is a precursor to successful energy policy, regardless of who is leading. You need to have the capacity to invest, and that comes with effective economic situation. It also can offer more resilient growth. One of the issues that emerged quite a number of times, and I've reiterated here, is around building resilient energy systems. Fourthly, regional interconnections and eventually integration requires trust. It's deeply dependent upon public consensus, social acceptance, and that, of course, is very challenging. Not all parts of the region will find it easy to work with others, but that has to be, of course, worked on. And to succeed is not just about ideology and politics, it's about competence, it's about leadership, and it's about the capacity to see and promote projects which will make a difference across the region. Let me move to conclusion really with some of the recommendations that have come out of discussions of this work. I think firstly, the importance of clarity on government policy directions. The first one is the recognition of the need for large-scale investments in infrastructure. When you look at it more broadly, the developments that are needed across the region, they're not, of course, just in energy. They're about roads and ports. Energy is but one factor. Communications. It's about the development of habitable cities and their development. And city development is surely going to be an important issue. This will require some government leadership in areas like structural reforms, the role of the private sector, the ability to develop and source the necessary funding. And in that context, there is important scope for regional integration. Secondly, and this comes up really in the individual sectoral discussions, there are new opportunities that are beginning to emerge. Firstly, on the demand side, the future of cities in the region looms large. I mentioned it a few moments ago. And the challenge is to be able to both have successful example, which is available for others in the region to follow, and perhaps ideally a model for those outside. And then, of course, at the sectoral level, wind, solar, possibly geothermal, continual growth in biofuels and natural gas, particularly in the latter part of the period. Thirdly, climate-related policies. What we need to understand is this is, of course, a key concern in the region. And the region itself has been an important shaper and proponent of global climate policy. One would see that as being something that continues. And lastly, and this is, of course, the point of scenarios, we're not without risks. If there's a rapid turn down in demand for fossil fuels, there's a need to adequately adjust economies to prepare for that where appropriate. And equally, the issue of moving into a rock environment, there's a strong argument that says that regions should try to focus on policies and roadmaps that take them more towards a tango or samba future, if this is at all possible. To conclude, I started by saying the last 45 years will not provide the basis for moving forward. And I would like to believe that these scenarios have tried to give us a sense of where we might be going and how different that might be. We are on the cusp, I believe, of quite fundamental change. Sometimes we don't see it because we're overwhelmed by circumstances in the present. But the challenge of the world's industry leaders and within the region is a difficult one, is to maintain the current integrity of the energy systems, but steer us towards this new transformed future. This requires a reconsideration of policy, strategy, thinking about novel and risky investments. It will require human ingenuity and leadership. And I wish you well in contributing to such a future. So with that, I'd like to stop and thank you for your patience. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Gerald, for such an important conference on presentation of this also important study. Muchas gracias por esta importante conferencia, Gerald, que resume pues los hallazgos de un muy importante estudio del Consejo Mundial de la Energía. En este momento tenemos oportunidad de hacer algunas preguntas que ustedes quieran al ingeniero Gerald Davis. Por favor, levante la mano. Ingeniero Somayoa.
Yo quiero agradecer por hacernos participar en un análisis tan importante e interesante que nos ha hecho esta tarde. Nos ha mostrado una extraordinaria interconexión entre las diferentes fuentes de recursos energéticos. Por un lado, el desarrollo y el consumo de los combustibles fósiles, y por el otro lado, la extraordinaria velocidad con que se desarrolla la tecnología y el uso de los recursos renovables. Y junto con esto, la innovación tecnológica que usted lo ha mostrado muy claramente. En este escenario, el mundo se está haciendo una pregunta y yo quisiera que usted nos dé un comentario. ¿Cuál es la pregunta que se hace el mundo en este momento? El presidente Trump de los Estados Unidos estaría esperando 50.000 millones de dólares en inversión en nuevas prospecciones de recursos fósiles, básicamente carbón y petróleo. Y por el otro lado están los que promueven y defienden las acciones en favor del cambio climático, la innovación tecnológica aplicada al uso de energías renovables como la solar y la eólica. ¿Cuál es su percepción frente a esta controversia o diferencia de pensamientos? Gracias.
Thank you for the question. Let me just start with. Sorry, let me start with to have you imagine a meeting with proponents of the three scenarios, and as you've mentioned, President Trump, I'll put it in the U.S. context. A round table. President Trump, Al Gore, Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the buccaneer, the inventor, promoter of Tesla, other interesting renewables. Al Gore, promoter, passionate about addressing climate change. Donald Trump, I put this in the most positive terms, reflective and responsive to the fact that many people have not benefited from the globalization of economies and find themselves left behind. These are all very, in my view, legitimate positions to take. But how would that conversation go? And if it were a conversation now expanded to at the level of states in the US, how does California and New York, which is already a long way down the road to addressing climate change, at least in relative terms, stack up against the coal mining regions of West Virginia, the oil producing areas? I think the fact is we have a set of complex issues for which no single government, no single individual can offer a resolution. This makes for difficult political times. It means that you cannot be sure what the outcome will be. There are people, if I contrast this work with some of the projections, who say, well, demand is much lower than I thought it would be. But then, of course, the response is, well, you might expect it to be lower if there are less people. The growth rates are much less, and if productivity is poorer, for example. So I don't have, and I think it's irresponsible to give my personal views on this. I don't have the answers to this, but I do see a powerful dialogue underway. I would like to see it informed as much as possible by evidence-based analysis and not ideological positions. These are very difficult issues to face. They fall more to the generation of my children and maybe my grandchildren. But it's incumbent upon us to make a start. We're engineers, we're economists, we think about these things, we have our life's experience to inform us. I would like to believe you can create a world which is sufficiently excited, focused, and creative to take the best out in the region, tango and samba. Maybe new musical instruments might be needed and new forms of dance, but it would be local, real, and I suspect, because of the uniqueness of the region, it's about how you make cities work. It's how you make hydropower and renewables complementary, build systems, which, for very good reasons, you could become examples of world leaders. I'll stop there. I hope I've partially addressed the issue.
Thank you. Next question, Dr. Montoya.
Gracias. Bueno, más o menos la respuesta está en la conferencia misma, pero quisiera que sea más puntual en un problema que tenemos los países en desarrollo. Vemos que a medida que avanza la tecnología, sea esta energética o en otros campos, la brecha se hace cada vez más grande entre los países que han tenido tecnología, que desarrollan tecnología y el resto. Ahora tenemos las nuevas tecnologías y todas ellas están hechas siempre en el norte y cada vez es más cara traer esta tecnología. Todo lo que tenemos, energía solar o lo que fuera, los instrumentos vienen del norte. ¿Cómo ve usted esa tendencia que agrava la brecha tecnológica? ¿Hay alguna forma de un poco mitigarla?
Well, I think firstly the issue is, are you a little country or are you a big country? So if you are a Brazil, you can plausibly, in your wind developments, request that factories be put in locally, assembled locally. You're going to have to maintain systems locally. And so it may be that in the short term there's a need to import. But longer term, if these are fundamental part of the new structure, you would envisage that any sensible government would try and negotiate to ensure that these things are not just installed locally, but built locally. Then there's the question of pioneering. I mean, you just go to any of the websites that deal with development issues in rural areas and so on. It's an enormous multiplicity of examples. Some of them are not so much about equipment, they're about ways of doing things. I think, I'm not quite sure where the speaker is from, but I would say this is part of the debate that needs to be had. And it's not just between developed and developing, the North and the South. It's a question, to come back to Donald Trump, it's about what are seen as fair shares in a particular country as well. Sometimes the differences in income can be stark within a developing country. And the question of how you handle that is always, again, a very big issue. You've got to fight to ensure that you've got, as I would say, your fair share of production given the market size and opportunity. Where are your local entrepreneurs? Governments need to be supportive of that. I'm sorry if I'm a bit trite on this, but I hope that's a reasonable answer.
Por favor,
La señorita, su pregunta, siempre procurando que la pregunta sea sintética para que el conferencista la enfoque totalmente, ¿no?
Good afternoon, engineers, my friend. Congratulations, Mr. The first question is the energy, very important in energy. My country, Peru, is enough or in the world is enough? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't pick that up clearly. Could the translator repeat that? In English. So, sorry, I think I've got a conflict.
Pásale el micro de nuevo, por favor.
Buenas tardes, colegas ingenieros. Agradecer al expositor, el ingeniero. Mi pregunta hoy es, en nuestro Perú, nuestro país, Perú, ¿la energía es suficiente o es muy, en el mundo, es, digamos, completamente ya como perspectiva para el 2060? Gracias.
I'm not sure I understood this, but I'll have a go, and if it's not right, you come with a second. Is it sufficient? Well, I think the reality is there's an enormous amount of energy in the world. It's not so long ago that we go back, say, towards the end of the last century. People still saw predominantly fossil fuel developments right through into the second half of this century. So for us, it's always the challenge with energy. It's not so much we need energy to do things, must have energy to do things, because a lot of our life is so dependent upon it. It's what are the side effects? What are the consequences? I mean, one of the reasons why we have this discussion around the trilemma in the World Energy Council, the trilemma is recognizing we have issues of access, equity, affordability, as it were, one axis. We have issues about public health and environmental impact. Then we have security issues. We continue, and depending on who you are, you can have quite different views. Does Peru meet all of those objectives? And the answer is, well, if it doesn't, does it need to change some of its production into other areas? This new issue that's emerged around resilience. Resilience issues probably been discussed over the last 2 to 3 years. So what we see is the agenda for energy policy shifting and changing. I don't know Peru well, you and your colleagues do, but I would imagine there is a debate. That debate, in most countries, there's a debate about affordability, the cost. In many countries, there's an issue of public health issue in cities and the fuels to use. There are security issues, which sometimes are very serious. Sometimes they go below the surface. So I would envisage there is a genuine debate to be had in Peru, as there are in other countries, about appropriate energy policy and by implication, a context for the development of projects.
Muchas gracias. Creo que, a ver, veo tres manos, sí, tres manos sucesivamente. Por favor, sean sintéticos con la pregunta. Gracias.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming and give us your enrichment experience and this conference. Maybe complementing the question of the lady, I want to ask you if in this study you have considered the reserves of the natural gas and coal here, maybe in Latin America. How is going that to affect the demand part on the development on the demand until 2060? How is going these changes, this lack maybe of natural gas, going to affect as a fact the change in the demand?
I'm not sure that I have. I apologize. It's because I can hear clearly through here, but this is more difficult. Yeah, can you give that to me again? I apologize for that.
Okay. If you have considered, okay, si has considerado las reservas de gas natural y carbón que tienen tanta incertidumbre aquí con respecto al cambio en la demanda con respecto a estas incertidumbres. ¿Cómo cambiaría la demanda con respecto a estas incertidumbres?
Well, you're talking worldwide, is that right? So what's clear is when you look at yeah. So when we look at each of the fossil fuels, okay, let's start at the demand side first and then come back to the primary energy. On the demand side, what we're looking at is a very significant rise in the role of electricity as we urbanize, and I made some comments about that. Secondly, there's, in most countries, a very clear desire to address public health issues, and also in many, to address climate change concerns. That's already given a very strong impetus to renewables, the new renewables. And as indicated in the work, and if you look at the report, this has a very strong influence on coal developments. Now we're looking potentially at coal developments beginning to peak within the coming decade, maybe earlier, 2020, globally. That doesn't mean that, for example, El Cerrejón in Colombia doesn't go on producing, but what it does say is that that substantial investments in coal might become increasingly unacceptable. There will be regulations, for example, in Tango, which make coal expensive, that you're having to pay the environmental cost of the use of coal. All of this in the context of solar and wind technologies being increasingly lower cost, providing opportunities. And in many cases, they do a better job than coal. You can, in some parts of most countries, have your solar plants or wind nearby. They potentially provide some resilience to the system. So what is the summary? Coal, the real challenge, of course, is in places like the US, Australia, Indonesia, and that's going to take time, but what we'll be looking at will be a shift in production, even as global coal declines. Oil is perhaps an additional 10, 20, maybe 30 years before the peaking, depending on the scenario. Hopefully, in that period, governments will begin to reconsider structures of the economy and try to move away from strict dependence upon just exports of, for example, crude oil. You already see some countries, immense investments moving away from energy in the Middle East with a focus on finance, tourism, so on. And natural gas, in a way, is the perfect substitute to begin to move away from high carbon fuels. Why? Because it has 1 carbon atom to 4 of hydrogen. Oil products around 1 to 2 hydrogen. On coal, in many cases, the carbon content is larger than the hydrogen content. So this is a natural progression which leads to a substantially more significant low-carbon future and a displacement over time of fossil fuels. So you see, this is a gradual development. And it's difficult to envisage it's going to be smooth because countries have different timings, different challenges. There will be politicians elected who have different agendas. Interesting period.
Un segundito, por favor. Quiero ver cuántas preguntas hay todavía en la audiencia. Sírvanse mantener la mano arriba los que quieren hacer preguntas. 1, 2, 3, usted ahí. Sí. Y veo 3 manos en el fondo, ¿ya? 3 y 3, 6, 7, ya. Ok. No vamos a continuar en este momento absolviendo preguntas porque tenemos que tener cuidado con los horarios que hay que mantener. Si luego de las palabras que nos dirigirá el señor Mauricio Garrón, todavía no ha venido el señor viceministro, daremos lugar a quizá 1 o 2 preguntas, porque simplemente el horario tenemos que sostenerlo. Thank you very much, Gerald. Maybe we leave some questions conditional after the next greeting and conference from Mauricio Garrón. Muchas gracias al señor Davis. Despidámoslo con cariño.
Okay.
Voy a dejar con ustedes al señor Mauricio Garrón, que es funcionario de alto nivel en la CAF, el Banco de Desarrollo de Latinoamérica.
Muy buenas tardes, muchas gracias. Bueno, antes que nada, quisiera felicitar al WEC, al World Energy Council, por haber desarrollado este estudio. El objetivo de CAF de participar auspiciando este trabajo es justamente el de diseminar conocimiento en América Latina y en este caso sobre escenarios futuros que puede enfrentar de cara a los tomadores de decisión, la academia y a los organismos tanto públicos como privados, de muchas veces redireccionar esfuerzos, hacer alianzas, coordinar estrategias de cara al desarrollo sustentable de los recursos energéticos de América Latina. En este contexto es que este estudio consideramos es un aporte que va en este sentido y justamente esto se ha trabajado, digamos, en 3 escenarios, ¿no? Y 3 escenarios para mostrar que independientemente si se toman políticas de mercado donde solamente interviene el sector privado, como es el caso del escenario denominado Samba, o como es el caso de que el sector público tome una acción más fuerte y más controladora, como es el caso de Tango, en ambos escenarios se muestra, digamos, un desarrollo de alguna forma más armónico que en un escenario en cual no existe, digamos, esta coordinación entre el sector público y privado. Lo interesante de estos 3 escenarios que nos muestra el WEC es que en estos 3 escenarios algunos de los retos se mantienen para América Latina. Es decir, independientemente si el sector toma el control o lo deja al mercado, los retos permanecen para América Latina y estas deberían ser unas llamadas de atención para el desarrollo sostenible. Voy a resaltar algunas de ellas que consideramos son importantes de resaltar. Una de estas es justamente el diversificar la matriz energética. La matriz energética de América Latina se encuentra altamente concentrada en la hidroelectricidad y como lo hemos visto, de acuerdo a las proyecciones, la hidroelectricidad va a mantener un rol protagónico en América Latina y a nivel mundial, pero particularmente en América Latina porque todavía América Latina cuenta con gigantescas reservas de hidroenergía, por lo tanto hace un recurso totalmente fundamental para el desarrollo de la región. Ahora, si bien este recurso tiene que ser desarrollado de manera sustentable, incorporando los temas económicos, ambientales y sociales, pero en ambos escenarios, en los 3 escenarios, se ha mostrado que la hidroenergía va a jugar un rol fundamental. Otro de los temas también que se está viendo es la incorporación de otras fuentes no convencionales, como son la eólica y la solar, que como ustedes saben han bajado los precios de manera radical en los últimos años, y esto ha contribuido a su entrada no solamente en América Latina, sino en el mundo. Y esto también pone ciertos retos para América Latina en cuanto a la planificación del sector y a su incorporación en la matriz de los países. Actualmente estamos como CAF trabajando en apoyar a los países en estos temas. Estamos haciendo estudios de potencial hidroeléctrico en varios países para determinación de nueva cartera de proyectos. Igualmente estamos trabajando en regulaciones y normativas y modelos para la incorporación de fuentes no convencionales, de forma de que puedan incorporarse a las redes sin generar inestabilidades en los sistemas. Otro de los temas importantes que se ha mencionado aquí es el liderazgo del sector público. El sector público ha mostrado que juega y va a jugar un factor, digamos, de señal hacia el mercado. En esto es importante resaltar la política energética, independientemente de los escenarios, tanto sea dejándolo solo al mercado o con la incorporación del sector público, la política energética tiene que ser clara para ambos casos y estar enfocada en horizonte de largo plazo. Esto lo que va a dar es una señal a los mercados para que se ordenen y se pueda, como decía los escenarios, bailar una samba o un tango de forma organizada y no terminar en un rock donde ninguno de los dos se entienda. Entonces, el liderazgo del sector público a través de la política energética será igualmente determinante. El rol de las ciudades. El rol de las ciudades también se ha señalado va a ser importante en la medida que tenemos cada vez ciudades más congestionadas, con más sectores, digamos, de ciudades intermedias que se han venido a las ciudades grandes. Latinoamérica es una de las regiones del mundo más urbanizadas, donde concentra mayor población urbana del mundo. Y eso congestiona todos los sistemas y esto llama una acción por un desarrollo de ciudades organizado, sostenible, donde se incorpora el sector no solo eléctrico, sino el transporte, las telecomunicaciones, donde tiene que haber una armonía en el desarrollo de estos sectores. Por lo tanto, el desarrollo de ciudades es otro de los retos que nos muestran estos escenarios que van a estar para América Latina en los próximos años. Temas también como la eficiencia energética, que son claves, que siempre se han mencionado en los temas de energía como importantes, pero van a ser aún más importantes los temas de eficiencia energética en el lado del transporte. Estamos viendo que muchos de los países de América Latina, y en el caso del Perú también, están incorporando medidas para la incorporación de automóviles eléctricos, vehículos a gas que aquí son muy conocidos. El tema de tecnologías para el transporte va a ser un tema clave, porque actualmente es el mayor cuello de botella, no solo en el tema de emisiones desde el punto de vista del sector, sino también de mayores ganancias en cuanto a la eficiencia energética. Así que este es otro de los temas en los cuales como CAF estamos trabajando, y al igual que muchos gobiernos de los países, ¿no? Temas como acuerdos del cambio climático, adaptación, mitigación, son y van a seguir siendo relevantes. Esto es importante mencionar en la medida que los países deben incorporar estos acuerdos en su planificación de política energética, en sus proyectos, en los estudios que estén llevando a cabo, de manera de desarrollar el sector de manera sostenible y amigable con los acuerdos y el ambiente. Por supuesto, todo esto va a demandar grandes inversiones. El sector está planificado para crecer, como lo hemos visto, en los próximos años. Fácilmente va a crecer un 15% más. Y por lo tanto, esto va a demandar no solamente lo que decíamos, una acción coordinada del sector público y privado, sino también grandes inversiones. Y para esto se necesita la incorporación del sector privado y del sector público, ¿no? Temas como los desarrollos público-privados, los acuerdos de desarrollo público-privados van a ser claves. CAF está trabajando también en estos temas y se van a poner mucho más necesarios en la medida que las inversiones que son necesarias, como ustedes lo saben, no solamente son en el sector de energía, sino también en otros sectores que demandan recursos. Por lo tanto, los acuerdos público-privados se ven como determinantes. También la integración energética, por supuesto, la integración energética lo hemos visto en ambos escenarios, sea en el escenario donde todo es el sector privado, cómo en el escenario donde el sector público tiene un rol más preponderante, la integración energética va a jugar un factor clave en temas de seguridad energética, de eficiencia energética, de ahorros para el sector económico, para el sector ambiental. Por lo tanto, temas de integración energética son temas que también América Latina tiene mucho por avanzar, mucho por coordinar. En este sentido, bueno, igualmente CAF está trabajando. Tenemos apoyos que estamos realizando a interconexiones que se están estudiando entre Bolivia, Brasil, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, y estamos analizando otras interconexiones también, porque consideramos, al igual que lo ha mostrado este estudio, que son factores claves para el desarrollo de América Latina y donde el enfoque que se está viendo es que los países se están viendo es que es un ganar-ganar. Es un ganar para los países que se interconectan, es un ganar para la población porque mejoran los costos, porque se reducen las ineficiencias, porque mejora el ambiente. Así que la integración energética, independientemente del enfoque que le den los gobiernos al desarrollo de su sector, es un tema que debe ser visto con atención. Quiero resaltar un último punto que me pareció muy importante y es el de la educación técnica. La educación técnica es un factor que también se ve como clave para el desarrollo de los próximos años y donde pocos países estamos poniendo atención. La educación técnica de ingenieros, la educación técnica a nivel medio es fundamental porque lo que se vienen son grandes obras de ingeniería, grandes proyectos de infraestructura y América Latina tiene un rezago en esta calificación. Por lo tanto, es un reto para los países trabajar en lo que es educación, entrenamiento, capacitación, de cara a poder enfrentar todos estos retos. Igualmente, desde CAF estamos trabajando, impulsando temas de capacitación. Tenemos grandes proyectos también sobre eficiencia energética, sobre integración energética, sobre apoyo a las energías renovables. Así que esto está mucho en línea con los temas que estamos impulsando. Y queremos nuevamente felicitar al Consejo Mundial de Energía por haber hecho este lanzamiento, por haber trabajado en este estudio. Y no quiero dejar pasar un último comentario referido a los temas de innovación, que hace un momento hacían mención y consultaban. Los temas de innovación son igualmente fundamentales para América Latina. Como alguien por ahí también mencionó, la brecha se está incrementando. América Latina no tiene los indicadores de innovación creciendo como lo tienen las otras regiones del mundo. Entonces es una tarea en la cual debe trabajar y particularmente la innovación tecnológica, que es la innovación más atrasada en la región. Tenemos mucho esfuerzo en lo que es ciencia, en lo que son laboratorios, pero la innovación tecnológica está olvidada de algún sentido. Así que es fundamental que América Latina incorpore en su agenda la innovación tecnológica. Igualmente desde CAF estamos trabajando en un programa de innovación tecnológica para apoyar a los países en mejorar, digamos, el desarrollo de patentes especialmente. Así que tenemos muchos casos de éxito y consideramos que América Latina no solamente puede, sino que debe incrementar su nivel de desarrollo de patentes y especialmente en los temas tecnológicos. Así que quería resaltar esos temas, nuevamente agradecer al WEC, agradecer a todos ustedes. Y bueno, estamos desde CAF listos y prestos para apoyar estas iniciativas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias al señor Mauricio Garrón. Vamos a tomar el tiempo para intentar responder una o dos preguntas a lo más. Gerald, could you please answer one or at the most two questions that yes, please, come over here. Take the podium, please. Take the podium, please. Ingeniero Edwin Quintanilla, por favor. Vamos a ver si...
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi pregunta era muy puntual. Lo que yo vi en la conferencia para el caso de América Latina es que el crecimiento debe estar fundamentalmente en renovables y en gas natural, ¿no? Ahí tengo dos cuestiones. La primera es cuáles son los mecanismos de cumplimiento, de enforcement que se ha visto para este tipo de medidas. No sé si han identificado algunos. porque, digamos, América Latina es la región más renovable del planeta, ¿no? En general. Ya tiene muchas fuentes renovables y eso es interesante. Y lo segundo es, si eso se da así y básicamente la matriz se va a reorientar a lo que es renovables y gas natural, ¿cuál sería el futuro del petróleo en América Latina y especialmente fuera de Venezuela, ¿no? ¿Qué se esperaría, digamos, en estas actividades de exploración en países, digamos, emergentes en América Latina?
Audio, por favor.
Let me start again. I want to talk a little bit more generally about the positioning of the region in the context of the change I've indicated and other aspects going on in the world. When you look at coal peaking, that's probably not the biggest of the issues locally. First of all, there will be some countries that will continue. The challenge exists, first of all, with those who are in a global trade, where suddenly they'll find that coal, for various reasons, is less acceptable in tango. It could be that there's significant imputed carbon price on. So there's a change in structure of the market. Secondly, there will be challenges to longer-term investment. Thirdly, there will be shareholder issues for coal companies. Now, how these will play out, they'll play out in their own way. But the challenge of maintaining coal developments will come into question. We know from many parts of the world where coal has declined and largely disappeared, you're left with significant social issues. So the challenge of handling the social issues will be there. But I suspect in this part of the world, you have much less of a problem. Oil, in some ways, is also, I wouldn't say it's no problem. I'll come back to the crude oil issues, the challenge around the Orinoco tar belt, the issues of expensive offshore crude. The first issue is on the demand side. There's a strong track record on ethanol development and use. That's a technology that is seen to grow very substantially in some scenarios. So that is about domestic development. When we look at wind and solar, you come back to the question earlier, important will be the establishment of domestic industries, both to produce, innovate, develop, maintain these systems. And there are plenty of examples around the world about what that means in terms of new people, new training, and so on. And that's potentially quite positive. There's a challenge around hydro and the resilience of electricity systems. Again, some parts of the region will be favored, others less, but this is probably handleable within the region. The resilience issue is a big issue, and we don't know how big an issue it is. The concern is around the not knowing. Once you know more clearly what it is, then you can decide what to do. So the really challenging issue are countries like Venezuela, which have not yet had time to prepare. Notwithstanding I don't want to comment on the present challenges, but it has not yet prepared itself for 1 or 2 generations ahead. There are oil and gas provinces around the world, which are, of course, enormously profitable, like Qatar, some of the Middle Eastern states, that are already looking at diversifying their economies. And this is a matter of decades to do. Is the region poorly positioned? Probably not. It has significant hydro, exceptional hydro, and we've discussed the issues. It has capacity to handle renewables. And then I come back to the issue, perhaps to close. We're talking about very significant urbanization. Probably the biggest set of challenges is to is to handle whether it's transport and the congestion of cities, whether it's poor living conditions in cities. The ability to give everybody a decent home, access to a home, access to shelter in some form or another will take a new turn in the context of new technologies and new possibilities. We come back again to the point raised by the previous speaker, and that's the need for education, good education, the need to be innovative, to develop not so much patents here, but pragmatic solutions which are of value across the region. It's a worthy challenge.
Muy bien, vamos a tomar la pregunta de la señorita, por favor.
Good afternoon. LAC is a complex region. There are many difficult factors like you talk about. No? Some countries don't have a leadership and competence. There is a difficult regional integration. Another problem is that there is a regional vulnerability to climate change. Many factors. I would like to know, can you tell us about successful experience that can help us to fight to these energetic scenarios? Thank you.
Well, one of the remarkable things about this world is that people are not afraid to share their experiences. There are websites, there are organizations that are concerned with different aspects of energy, including, obviously, the World Energy Council. What makes the World Energy Council work is really the member committees and their ability and desire to share experience, and that can be shared more widely. What can one say? I mean, this sounds trite, but a lot of learning comes when people know that you want to learn. It's in your own local community, it's in your own region. And I'm not talking of large regions, it can be a small district in a city, it can be, there's so many, if I look across Western Europe and the push towards solar and wind, it's rife, it's full of all sorts of examples and people wanting to share their experience. So that all that I can say is if you're personally, or you and your colleagues are really desiring to bring change to your area, your district, then contact other people who are trying to do the same. Your leadership locally can encourage broader leadership. And there's no need here to feel embarrassed or limited. We do what we can do. This is about quite broad-based fundamental change that we're looking at taking place over decades. And it requires passion, commitment, example, and sharing of successes. And we have all the technologies that allow us to share best experience. I apologize that what I said is general. I don't know the region, country here, so I can't comment on that. But every experience in these new areas is valuable for somebody. Thank you.
Muy bien. Ingeniero, por favor. No, espera el micrófono, por favor.
Para ser más concreto en español rápidamente. Mire, veo que una lectura rápida de los estudios de la UEC puede, y de hecho se está viendo por las preguntas, generar confusión. Por ejemplo, hacen un escenario dentro de la denominación Samba y otro escenario denominación tango, que significa más estatismo, el otro escenario es más, digamos, mercado. Pero realmente no le parece de que la solución, sobre todo de política energética, está entre ambos. O sea, porque el Estado y el mercado son interdependientes. Y eso muy bien creo que lo ha interpretado el representante de la CAF. Además, ese por un lado. Por otro lado, también otra confusión que puede haber es que realmente lo que se debe analizar, de hecho, por regiones. Por ejemplo, la región latinoamericana es potencialmente la que tiene mayor potencial de fuentes renovables de energía, como la hidroelectricidad, por ejemplo, ¿no? Por lo tanto, requiere políticas diferentes que la región europea, que, bueno, tiene sus propias limitaciones de recursos energéticos que ya conocemos, por eso que se están orientando a la solar y a la eólica, tanto inclusive marina como terrestre. Entonces, ¿no le parece de que, además, la tendencia mundial también se toma en cuenta de que ponen, digamos, efectivamente, que el gas va a ser otro, digamos, energético que va a ir reemplazando al petróleo, lo cual es cierto, pero depende, en la región latinoamericana, digamos, la situación también puede verse de que tiene gran potencial, pero depende de los países, o sea, también inclusive hay problemas de diferencia de la matriz energética entre países. Hay países como el Perú, que tiene 7% de consumo del potencial hidroenergético, solamente se usa el 7% de todo el potencial. Sin embargo, se ha establecido una política en la cual se está tendiendo a cada vez generar con gas natural, porque creen que el gas va a ser eterno. Y sin embargo es un recurso agotable. ¿No le parece que esa política también a mediano o largo plazo no es sustentable? Más bien hay que tender un poco a los recursos hacia los recursos renovables, como es la tendencia internacional. Eso sería todo.
Thank you. I mean, quite a number of questions, observations. Let me pick up two of them. Firstly, Tango and the emphasis on government, state directives, Samba on markets. I made the point at the beginning, countries differ enormously in terms of experience, culture. I mentioned Deng Xiaoping's comment, and it's worth repeating. It's not whether a cat is black or white, it's whether it catches mice. And I think that's a very, very sound philosophy. There are no countries that are simply one way or the other, although you could argue North Korea might be very state directive. And I'm sure we could find examples of markets. But markets have to live within a regulatory structure to be successful. But it's really about, as I pointed out on that table, it's really about what is the fundamental vision that drives your activities. Is it success in some worldwide set of markets, high levels of competition, or is it much more national planning and so on? And what is the happy medium? We know that both systems have enormous problems. If you allow competition to run rife, then you probably lead to higher levels of inequity. On the other hand, the risks of very strong state directives and state monopolies are corruption, bureaucracy, and so on. Keeping that balance right is not a matter of an outsider theoretically saying what's right. It's understanding within a country where, in fact, we should be moving. Why do we, in fact, look at more stylized examples in scenarios? Because we're looking to try and uncover some understanding, and therefore you tend to look at more extreme examples. By and large, to come to the second question, and I will not have answered all of them, when we talk about natural gas resources, what is driving, you could say what had already partially driven the move towards renewables, and for example, ethanol as a fuel in Brazil, is first of all, they have a number of advantages. They're being domestic. You can address security issues to some extent. There may be costs involved. You need to be careful about this. Natural gas is a fuel. I mean, we don't know exactly how much there is, but there is an enormous amount in the world. And what natural gas is doing is providing flexibility in certain systems. As we move away from simple electric dispatch structures, which are about base load and peak load, to larger amounts of solar and wind, we need to reconsider the way we run systems. The market design has to change. And there is a role for a flexible fuel like natural gas. We don't yet know how to run very large systems just with renewables. If I was standing here 5 years ago, I would have said maybe 25% intermittence. We know that that can now rise quite a bit further, but it's about increased interconnection, new forms of storage, and flexible fuels that can assist. So if you assume that the one fundamental thing any electricity and energy systems should do is to give the people it serves the possibility of turning a switch and the light goes on, having fuel available if you have a vehicle which you can have when you want it, assuming you can pay for it. If you want to have those sort of basic things in place, you need systems that are responsive and flexible. And as I made reference to, that agenda is shifting in the region. In the context, I mentioned El Nino, resilience of electricity networks. It's again another factor that needs to be looked at. I suspect, and I'll stop here, that as many have said, all energy forms have problems. If it's coal, it's about air pollution issues. It's also about the lives lost in mining, and so on and so forth. If it's diesel fuel, it's about nitrous oxides, and so on. If it's large-scale solar, it may be about some of the rare metals that are needed. And same with wind, to increase the efficiency of wind turbines. So as we begin to develop into these areas, we're looking at new areas where policy will be needed. So I would be less concerned about the issue of natural gas because it can have a very useful role and it might eventually be completely phased out. But we've yet to find solutions to these new technologies that are emerging, even to understand their new problems. I'll stop there. Thank you. Good. Thank you for your observation.
Thank you very much, Gerald, for your patience in answering so many questions. Muchas gracias, Gerald, por tu paciencia, habiendo respondido tantas preguntas. Thank you. El señor decano, por favor, si es que nos acompaña. Bienvenido y muchas gracias. Aquí. En brevísimos momentos, el señor viceministro de Energía viene para conversar con nosotros. Quiero decirles que el viceministro de Energía, por estatutos del Comité Peruano del Consejo Mundial de la Energía, es el presidente honorario del Comité Peruano. De modo que él ha aceptado acompañarnos un momento. Muy buenas tardes, muchísimo gusto. para concluir esta conferencia, el señor decano nacional del Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú nos va a dirigir unas brevísimas palabras.
Sí, muy buenas tardes. A nombre del Consejo Nacional del Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, quiero transmitir a todos ustedes el saludo de nuestro Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú. Debo manifestar a ustedes que lamento mi tardanza, pero comprenderán ustedes el día de hoy, 31 de mayo, ocurrió un gran evento sísmico en el norte donde murieron más de 70,000 personas. El sismo del 31 de mayo de 1970. Y en tal sentido hemos estado celebrando, conmemorando, más que celebrando, estas actividades en relación al establecimiento de una red de monitoreo sísmico en nuestra universidad. Lamentablemente eso ha impedido que esté en la hora indicada, que era a las 2:30. Simplemente para indicar a ustedes que felicito al Consejo Mundial de Energía y sobre todo al Comité Peruano, que ha hecho posible que podamos colaborar con ustedes como Consejo Nacional del Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú en la organización de esta conferencia internacional Escenarios Energéticos para Latinoamérica y el Caribe al 2060. Hemos firmado también ya un convenio entre el Comité Peruano y el Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, Consejo Nacional, para poder trabajar en conjunto en el futuro otras actividades relacionadas a conferencias, capacitaciones, etc. Quisiera saludar al doctor Gerald Davis por las exposiciones que ha hecho en esta oportunidad, así como a la ingeniera Claudia Combrefold y el economista Mauricio Garrón del CAF por su participación en este evento. En consecuencia, quiero manifestarle nuestro agradecimiento por haber podido celebrar esta conferencia en nuestra institución y estamos a su total disposición para continuar colaborando y trabajando en este tipo de conferencias. Muchas gracias. Señor viceministro, muy bienvenido a nuestro local de Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú.
Antes de la clausura que hará el señor viceministro, el Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, Consejo Nacional, y el Comité Peruano, Consejo Mundial de la Energía, quieren entregarles un recuerdo a quienes nos han acompañado hoy en día, y en nombre del Consejo Mundial, Comité Peruano, let me give a token of appreciation to Gerald. Queremos entregarle un símbolo de aprecio por haber venido desde Londres para estar con nosotros. Por favor, el señor decano, a la señora, primero al señor Davis, ¿no? Al señor ingeniero Davis. Gerald, on behalf of the Peruvian Committee of World Energy Council, give this token of appreciation. Del señor decano del Consejo Nacional del Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, la ingeniera señora Claudia Cronenbold, vicepresidente para Latinoamérica y el Caribe del Consejo Mundial de la Energía. Y finalmente del señor decano al señor Mauricio Garrón de la CAF, que han auspiciado y apoyado tanto el estudio como esta actividad en la ciudad de Lima. Gracias. Y pido por favor al señor viceministro de Energía que nos dirija unas palabras para concluir esta ceremonia.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Guillermo, por la invitación. En realidad, en mi calidad de presidente honorario del capítulo del Consejo, de la representación nacional del Consejo Mundial de la Energía, del World Energy Council, para mí es un placer poder hacer una clausura de este evento y agradecer también a nuestros expositores que han tenido la amabilidad de hacer la presentación de los escenarios, ¿no? Que se están planteando para Latinoamérica sobre la evolución del sector energético. Realmente he podido yo dar una revisión a la presentación que me alcanzaron muy gentilmente, ¿no? Lamentablemente no pude venir antes por los compromisos de Estado sobre los cuales estamos trabajando, pero me ha parecido muy interesante el trabajo que se viene realizando sobre el balance en relación a los temas del abastecimiento de energía, seguridad energética, el cambio climático y el asunto de la equidad en el suministro de energía. Este es un trinomio muy importante que en el Perú hemos venido ya recogiendo a lo largo de estos últimos años. En realidad, el concepto de seguridad energética es un concepto relativamente nuevo en nuestra legislación energética. Se originó a principios de esta década como un concepto que permite establecer una serie de políticas destinadas a la garantía del suministro de energía en pos de la seguridad y la estabilidad económica. Pero también hemos dado pasos bastante importantes en el asunto de la equidad, ¿no? Se han establecido una serie de mecanismos, ¿no? Ya había un mecanismo en el Perú que se creó para el sector eléctrico que se llamó y existe hasta ahora, que es el Fondo de Compensación Social Eléctrica, y luego creamos el Fondo de Inclusión Social Energético, ¿no? Esquemas de subvenciones que podemos dar a las poblaciones vulnerables con el objeto de brindarle mayor acceso a la energía, tanto a la infraestructura como al consumo, ¿no? Y finalmente el Perú en este campo también ha sido muy activo en el tema del cambio climático. Nosotros somos signatarios del último convenio que se dio en París hace poco, la COP21, y que estableció una serie de compromisos hacia el año 2030 para la mitigación del cambio climático. Y una parte de toda esta política está vinculada a la administración del sector energético. Tanto así de que el Perú fue uno de los primeros países en iniciar un esquema de licitaciones de energías renovables, que ha sido exitoso en atraer inversiones y que en realidad bajo este mecanismo hemos garantizado tener hasta un 5% de suministro de generación eléctrica renovable, ¿no? Ante todo esto, nosotros creemos que hay muchos pasos por dar adelante. Yo creo que la orientación que nos dan estos foros como el World Energy Council es muy importante para nosotros que estamos en el trabajo del diseño de la política energética. En realidad, en la administración del presidente Kuczynski estamos teniendo ya algunos pasos importantes para garantizar la masificación del gas natural, que va a llevar a el establecimiento de una garantía de suministro de energía a las amas de casa y a los consumidores residenciales mediante políticas de masificación del uso domiciliario. Y también podemos decir de que en este momento nuestro sistema eléctrico, a diferencia de décadas pasadas, es un sistema robusto, un sistema de transmisión que está bastante mallado, que ha operado bien durante la emergencia nacional del fenómeno del Niño Costero que hemos tenido hace unos meses, y además que tenemos una suficiencia en la generación porque tenemos bastante capacidad, ¿no? Justamente durante la emergencia, por ejemplo, que tuvimos en el Perú, hemos tenido disponibles 2.5 gigawatts de potencia instalada listos para entrar a cubrir cualquier déficit de generación, lo cual no se había visto en otras situaciones en la historia del Perú. La historia del Perú ha estado caracterizada por apagones y por un montón de problemas. Eso está ya, digamos, dejado en el pasado, aunque hay que trabajar mucho todavía en la distribución eléctrica, ¿no? Trabajemos en la modernización de las empresas y en la inversión a largo plazo para que se puedan mejorar las redes de distribución. Y también estamos enfocados en una meta que ha establecido el presidente Kuczynski de alcanzar un grado de electrificación rural al 2021 del 99%. A la fecha estamos con un 84%, ¿no? Y juntado a eso, puedo anunciarles también de que estamos trabajando en el desarrollo de una serie de reformas, ¿no? Que vamos a trabajar durante los próximos meses. En el caso del sector petrolero, queremos, junto con Perú Petro, venimos trabajando en un paquete para poder estimular la extracción petrolera, pero con reglas sostenibles y respetando el medio ambiente, ¿no? Asimismo, también estamos por conformar un grupo de trabajo para poder discutir los cambios en la legislación eléctrica que nos permitan garantizar a largo plazo, el año 2030, un suministro competitivo, porque es cierto de que, si bien es cierto, en este momento tenemos un grado de seguridad energética muy adecuado, sin embargo, todavía hay que corregir las señales económicas dentro del sistema para que hayan inversiones sostenibles, y hay que revisar esto de la manera más profesional y con un objetivo claro de llevar al 2030 al Perú a una modernización del sector eléctrico. Eso lleva a revisar, por ejemplo, el sistema de los mercados de generación, la lógica de la transmisión eléctrica, el plan de transmisión, y además y complementar el marco asociado a la generación distribuida y el rol nuevo de las energías renovables dentro de la matriz energética. Porque si bien es cierto, hemos introducido energías renovables, ¿no?, dentro de nuestra matriz, aún hay un esquema de subsidios, ¿no?, que creemos que ya podríamos levantar y dar un espacio para que las energías renovables entren de manera más competitiva, ¿no? En líneas generales, esos son los temas que venimos trabajando. Yo creo que van a haber bastantes anuncios en los próximos meses respecto a los temas, y dentro del marco de transparencia iremos anunciándolo, y las normas que vayamos a proponer las iremos prepublicando en su momento para recibir los comentarios, ¿no? Yo quisiera puntualizar que esto es necesario para que el Perú pueda entrar al concierto internacional de tal forma de que podamos estar a la vanguardia de la modernidad, dado de que recuerden que el Perú compite con otros países. Efectivamente, el marco que estamos haciendo es en función, en principio, de la Alianza del Pacífico, ¿no? México, Colombia y Chile, que son nuestros socios en la Alianza del Pacífico, han dado pasos adelante en cambios en el sector hidrocarburos, el sector eléctrico, que creo que debemos aspirar a alcanzar, ¿no? Y en realidad esto es parte del concierto mundial. La información que se comparte en el Consejo Mundial de Energía es muy importante para poder hacer estas comparaciones de las mejores prácticas y tener también un horizonte de la proyección de la demanda de energía a largo plazo, porque eso justamente también es lo que va a guiar la inversión, ¿no? Yo quiero terminar mi discurso de clausura de este importante evento agradeciendo de nuevo al Colegio de Ingenieros del Perú, que ha tenido la iniciativa, y yo creo que debemos seguir manteniendo ese tipo de espacios de diálogo a futuro para intercambiar ideas y conocer también lo que los expositores externos que nos pueden apoyar en hacer una revisión de todos estos escenarios se pueda seguir difundiendo entre todos para hacer una opinión formada y actualizada de lo que está sucediendo en el contexto mundial. Sin más, reitero mi agradecimiento por esta oportunidad y doy por clausurado el evento. Muchísimas gracias.
Señoras y señores, por favor, acompáñennos un momento para disfrutar de un vino de honor por la reunión.
Buenas tardes, los invitamos por favor a un vino de honor en el patio de nuestra cafetería, si fueran tan amables. La puerta, abriendo. A nuestros invitados los invitamos a nuestro vino de honor, por favor. Por aquí. Pueden pasar por aquí, por favor, van a abrir las puertas.
Muchas gracias y por favor los invitamos al brindis de honor que se va a